A single lamp burned in the dark mansion. He stood behind the door, breath held, watching the woman he'd sworn never to trust risk everything for a child that wasn't his blood. In that moment, something long dead in Kang Min-ho's chest opened its eyes. Welcome to Afro-Korean romance, where love has no borders. If you believe in love, please like, share, and subscribe for more Afro-Korean romance stories. The rain hit the tall windows of the Kang estate like a warning nobody dared speak aloud. Kang Min-ho was not a man who hid. He owned the streets of Seoul's underworld the way other men own neckties, effortlessly, completely. But tonight, standing in the shadow of his own hallway, he had told his guards to say he wasn't home. He wanted to see something with his own eyes. He wanted to see what Amanda would do when she thought no one was watching. 3 months earlier, Amanda had walked into that mansion with nothing but a suitcase, a nursing degree from Lagos, and a stubborn refusal to be intimidated by wealth. She'd taken the job to care for his late brother's daughter, 7-year-old Yuna, a child the Kang family treated like a duty rather than a daughter. Min-ho hadn't wanted a new maid. He'd wanted, if he was honest with himself, to be left alone with his ghosts. But Amanda had curves that moved like poetry and eyes that refused to lower when powerful men expected fear. The first time she looked at him, really looked, unbothered by his reputation, something in his chest had cracked open like a door long rusted shut. The next day he watched her from his study window as she taught Yuna to skip rope in the garden, laughing loud and unguarded. The kind of laugh that didn't belong in a house built on blood money. He told himself he was only observing staff behavior. He was lying to himself and he knew it. A few days later, whispers began among his men. The maid spoke too freely. She corrected the cook. She told a visiting associate politely but firmly that he could not smoke around the child. Min-ho should have fired her. Instead, he found himself defending her without meaning to. She's not wrong, he told his second-in-command, Seo Junwoo, in a tone that surprised them both. Junwoo only smirked and said nothing, which was somehow worse. That evening, Amanda found a small parcel outside her room, a warm coat exactly her size, no note attached. She knew instantly who it was from. No one else in that house paid attention to such details. She marched to his study, coat in hand, ready to refuse it. He didn't even look up from his papers. Keep it. Seoul winters are not for the soft-hearted. Don't need your charity. It's not charity. His eyes finally lifted, dark and unreadable. It's practicality. A sick maid is useless to me. She left the coat on his desk anyway. He kept it there for a week before quietly returning it to her closet himself. By the end of the month, it had become undeniable to his staff, if not yet to himself, that Kang Min-ho watched Amanda the way a starving man watches a warm meal through glass. At a family gathering, a wealthy business associate's son cornered Amanda near the drink table, his hand lingering too long on her arm as he complimented her exotic beauty. Min-ho crossed the room in 4 strides. He said nothing threatening. He simply stood beside Amanda, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers, and stared at the young man until he found somewhere else to be. I didn't need saving, Amanda muttered later. I know, Min-ho said. I wasn't saving you. I was removing an insect. She almost smiled. Almost later that night, Yuna woke screaming from a nightmare about her mother, who had died the year before in circumstances the family never discussed. Amanda was at her bedside within seconds, rocking the trembling child, humming a lullaby in a language that wasn't Korean but somehow fit anyway. Min-ho stood in the doorway, unnoticed, watching. He had buried men without blinking. He had ordered things done that would haunt lesser men forever. But watching this woman hold his niece like she was made of glass and gold, it undid something in him that violence never could. That was the night he stopped pretending he didn't feel it. The following morning, tension crackled between them over breakfast, a silence too loud to be comfortable. You were there last night, Amanda said finally. Watching, I was. Why? Because Yuna needed someone gentle, and you are the only gentle thing in this house. His voice was low, almost reluctant, as though the honesty cost him something. Amanda's breath caught. She looked away first, unsettled by how badly she wanted to believe him. Rumors began circulating in the underworld that the Baek family, longtime rivals of the Kangs, were making moves against Min-ho's territory. Tensions in the criminal hierarchy of Seoul were never quiet for long, and old enemies smelled weakness the moment a powerful man's guard dropped for a woman. Junwoo warned him bluntly. If they find out you're soft for the maid, they'll use her against you. Min-ho's jaw tight. No one touches her. You can't promise that. Can and I will. Week later, the danger became real. A black car trailed Amanda's taxi as she returned from the market with Yuna. It was subtle, professional, the kind of tale only someone trained would notice. Min-ho noticed. He always noticed things involving her now. That night he doubled security around the house and personally checked every window himself. Amanda found him outside Yuna's door at 2 a.m., gun holstered but visible. Scaring me, she whispered. Good, he said. Fear keeps people careful. I need you careful. By the end of the week, the push and pull between them had become unbearable. Amanda caught herself staring at his hands, his jaw, the quiet way he ordered his world with a single glance. He caught himself memorizing the sound of her laughter through walls. Neither said a word about it. But everyone in that house could feel it building like a storm that refused to break. The catalyst came on a night neither of them saw coming. The Baek family made their move not against Min-ho directly but against what he loved. A car forced Amanda's taxi off the road as she returned from picking up medicine for Yuna's fever. 2 men grabbed her, dragging her toward a van. She fought. She screamed. She bit down hard enough to draw blood on the hand covering her mouth. Min-ho's phone rang with the alert. and something in him went cold and lethal in a way even his own men hadn't witnessed in years. He arrived within minutes how no one would ever ask. He didn't negotiate. He didn't threat, he simply became the storm the underworld whispered about in fearful tones. By the time it was over, Amanda stood shaking against the wall of an alley safe, while Min-ho's knuckles bled and two of the beak men lay groaning on the wet asphalt. He crossed to her without a word and pulled her into his chest. His hand cradling the back of her head like she might shatter. Safe, he breathed against her hair. You're safe, I have you. The first time Amanda didn't pull away, that night back at the mansion, the adrenaline gave way to something rower, fear, relief, and an ache neither of them could name anymore. He tended to the small cut on her cheek himself, his hands unusually gentle for a man capable of such violence. Their faces hovered close, breath mingling, the air between them thick with everything unsaid. You could have died, he said hoarsely. You could have too, I don't matter. You do, she whispered, and something in her voice broke his last defense. He kissed her then, slow, desperate, like a man finally allowed to breathe after years underwater. She kissed him back just as fiercely, fingers curling into his shirt, years of restraint dissolving into heat and longing. The lamp light dimmed to shadow as the world outside the door disappeared, leaving only two people finally admitting what they had refused to name. By morning, Amanda's fear had returned tenfold, not of him but of herself, of how completely she had fallen for a man whose world could get her killed. She packed a small bag before dawn, leaving only a note, I can't do this. I'm sorry. When Min-ho found the empty room, something inside him cracked wide open. He didn't rage. Didn't destroy furniture like the old Min-ho might have. He simply said quietly to Junwoo, find her now. He found her at a bus station 3 hours later, sitting alone, suitcase at her feet, staring at nothing. He didn't approach with anger. He approached with something far more dangerous to his reputation, vulnerability. You ran, he said simply. I had to. Why? Because I'm terrified, she admitted, voice cracking. Terrified that after everything you'll wake up one day and see me as just staff, someone convenient, and I'll have given you everything for nothing. Min-ho knelt in front of her, uncaring of the strangers watching, uncaring of his reputation crumbling in public. Have buried men, Amanda. I have built an empire out of fear. But you, his voice shook, you are the only thing I have ever been afraid of losing. She searched his face for a lie and found none. Not convenient, she whispered. No, he said, you're everything. She let him pull her into his arms right there in the station, the suitcase forgotten, the fear finally quieted by the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. But danger was not finished with them yet. A few days later, the Beek family, humiliated by their failed kidnapping, escalated. They leaked a scandal to the press, falsified documents suggesting Min-ho's company was laundering money through a foreign charity Amanda had once volunteered for. It was a direct hit meant to destroy his empire and paint her as complicit. Reporters swarmed the company gates. Board members panicked. Old allies grew quiet, the way cowards do when storms approach. Min-ho called an emergency press conference that same evening, something his advisors begged him not to do. He stood before the cameras, Amanda absent by his own protective instruction, and dismantled the accusations point by point, exposing forged signatures and a paper trail leading directly back to Baek Do-hyeon's own account. Then, unprompted, he added one more thing. And let me be clear, he said, voice steady as steel. The woman you're trying to drag through the mud is not just my employee. She is the woman I love. Anyone who comes after her comes after me. Room went silent. Reporters scrambled. By morning, it was the only headline that mattered. Amanda watched the broadcast from the mansion, hand pressed to her mouth, tears slipping free. He hadn't just defended her. He had claimed her publicly without shame in front of the entire country that once feared his silence more than his words. When he returned home that night, she was waiting at the door. She didn't say anything. She simply walked into his arms and stayed there. The Beek family, exposed and disgraced, made one final desperate move, an attempt to abduct Yuna from her school, hoping to force Min-ho's hand through the child he'd quietly come to love as his own. The attempt failed within minutes. Min-ho had tripled security the moment the scandal broke, anticipating exactly this kind of cowardice. Baek Do-hyeon was arrested within the hour, his network dismantled by dawn, his name reduced to a cautionary tale whispered in the same underworld he once tried to rule. For the first time in years, Kang Min-ho's world was finally completely safe. By the following spring, the mansion that once echoed with silence and old grief was filled with something it hadn't known in a decade, laughter that didn't fade the moment footsteps approached. Yuna called Amanda Uma now, without prompting, without hesitation, and Min-ho never corrected her. One evening, beneath the same garden where he'd first watched Amanda skip rope with a grieving child, he knelt in front of her, a small velvet box trembling slightly in his usually steady hands. I have ruled empires, he said, voice unsteady in a way that made her heart ache. But I have never wanted to belong to anyone until you. Marry me, Amanda. Let the world know exactly who I choose, publicly, permanently, without fear. She didn't need 3 seconds to answer. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They married that autumn in a ceremony that blended both their world's Korean tradition and Afro-inspired color, drumming and hanbok sharing the same sacred space, proof that love truly recognized no borders. Yuna walked the aisle first, scattering petals with the same fearless joy Amanda had first taught her in that garden. A year later, in the quiet hours of a winter morning, Amanda woke Min-ho with a small, trembling smile, and a hand pressed gently to her stomach. "We're going to have a baby," she whispered. The man who had once ruled Seoul's underworld with an iron, untouchable heart broke into tears he made no effort to hide, pulling her close as though she were the only safety he had ever truly known. Outside, snow fell softly over the mansion, no longer a fortress of silence and grief, but finally completely a home.